Okay, welcome. This is Chris B, otherwise known as Bystander X79, and I'm back today with this video, and we're going to be doing a product opening here. As you can see, I have the Waverlight Structure Deck. Just came out last Friday. Alright, now the Waverlight Structure Deck, if you can actually see down here in the bottom of my cover, is a reloaded version of a structure deck that the TCG actually didn't get. So we get a lot of those cards in there. We get a lot of new stuff as well. And we're going to take a look at it. So let's go. Alright, get this open. Okay, there's all that stuff. Okay, so we get the standard fare with any structure decks here. We get our beginner's guide, always good to have in these type of decks. Just started with the duels basic rule set, and it's always good it's always a good read to turn around and to have for anybody getting new to the game or just if you're an experienced player, just refresh. All right, we also get a bit of a strategy guide here. It's the top. We have the deck list there, and if we open it up. With this first part right here, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Alright. You can see this is the strategy guide here for using the deck. And on the other side here, we have ideas of cards you can actually include to upgrade this deck in different packs and products. And of course, the reverse side is a map, which is not map, but mat. Which is basically the current update. You have the extra monster zones here on top, right up there, and you also have your main monster zones. This is pretty good. Alright, so if you like playing in paper mats, go for it. If you like the rubberized mats, like I do, go for it. We're here to talk about the cards itself. So I'm going to zoom back in a little bit. Alright, let's first talk about the first card right here, which is going to be Ava. Now, Ava is a level 1 light fairy type monster. Alright, whenever this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish up to 2 other light fairies from, I think it's your graveyard. Yeah, or your field. And then you can search your deck for up to the same amount of level 2 or lower fairy type monsters. Basically what Ava does is Ava searches out your hand traps, specifically the Herald hand traps, Herald of Orange Light, Herald of Green Light, and Herald of Purple Light. It can also search out the hand trap Hanawata as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about those hand traps when we get to them in the decks. They're all in the structure deck, so it's actually a very useful tool card. Alright, now we're going to talk a little bit about this card. This right here is the big boss monster of the deck, Sacred Arc Air Knight Parshath. Alright, so this is the newest evolution of Air Knight Parshath. To summon the big boss monster, you have to activate a counter trap or negate a monster, spell, or trap effect. And then you have to banish 2 fairy type monsters. Summon it out. It can do piercing damage, which is cool. And whenever you do piercing damage, you can search your deck for another Parshath card or a counter trap, which is actually very useful in this deck. That being said, attack power 2800, defense power 2300, which puts it on the same level as Archer Christina. Christina, on the other hand, just turns around the gate. It just stops special summons altogether. But this guy is actually pretty good. Believe it or not. Alright, then we have here the Power Angel Valkyria. Light Attribute, level 4, fairy type monster. Basically, whenever a counter trap resolves, after it resolves, you can search your deck for any light fairy monster. You can only gain this effect once per turn, so you can only really... You can't have multiple copies on her on the field and get multiple searches. I do like her. Level 4, 1800 attack body. She's stronger than a lot of the other counter fairies that are typically used. She's a good addition. Alright. I'm going to bring out the next two cards. They're both supers, and you have the Sanctum of Parshath and Rebirth of Parshath. You have the Continuous Spell and Counter Trap that, revolves around the Parshath cards. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Continuous Spell first. I, plus a lot of players, actually feel that that Continuous Spell, Sanctum of the Parshath, really should have been a field spell. But based on the amount of effects they put onto this card, I can get why they didn't make it a field spell, because it would have been way too OP as a field spell. On the other hand, I feel Konami trying to justify taking up a back row slot just to turn around and have this powerful card back there, it doesn't seem to really balance things out. Now, the effects, basically, this card, the Continuous Spell counts as the Sanctum in the Sky field spell while on the field of the graveyard. Now, I went through every single card in this deck before I shot this video. None of the cards ever mention Sanctum being in the graveyard. So, unless they're planning on doing future support for this, or maybe there's some older support that, they decided not to include, you gotta just remember that it counts as in both locations. The other thing is that it boosts fairy type monsters up by 300 attack and defense. Not a bad boost. It protects any set cards in the back row from being targeted or destroyed by card effects, which is good. And then basically what it does, it has a recycling effect. And that right there, I think, is just a little where this card really gets a little bit off kilter, because you could choose any 3 fairy type monsters from your graveyard, or counter traps from your graveyard, and then you're allowed to put them on the top of your deck in any order you want. So in other words, this card allows you to stack your deck with 3 cards. I can tell you this right now. In my opinion, the stacking should never really have been put into that, because basically you have cards like Valkyria in this deck, you have cards like Bountiful Artemis as well, and even the next monster card, which is Minerva, the Scholar of the Sky. All these cards, Valkyrie searches your deck for a life fairy. Battle of Artemis, whenever a counter trap activates, you draw a card. Minerva can actually recycle a counter trap that isn't the same name of the one you just activated. There's so many different ways to get cards out of your deck into your hand. You really don't need to stack. I think that effect should have been a shuffle. They could have lost the power-up effect, and with the loss of that effect, plus turning it into a shuffle with no draw, it could have been a field spell. Alright. But it's a continuous spell, so we got a deal. Next one is Rebirth of Parshath. Counter trap that negates monster effects, spells, traps. Only problem is that you have its cost. Now, its cost is seriously insane. You have to reveal a counter trap from your hand. Then you have to discard a card, and then you have to pay 1,000 life points just to activate this card. Now, we do have Guiding Ariadne in this deck, and its Pendulum effect does allow you to at least get past the discard and paying the LP for costs on this thing. But outside of that, there are at least 2 other cards that actually negate the same type of things. You have Divine Punishment, which basically requires the field spell or the continuous spell to be on the field in order for you to use it, and it negates monster effects, spells, or traps. And then you also have Ultimate Providence, which you have to discard the same type of card to negate the card you want to negate. So if you want to negate a monster effect, you discard an effect monster. If you want to negate a spell, discard a spell, negate a trap. Yeah. So there are two other cards that actually do it a little bit better than this that are included in this deck. It does have a summoning condition, and you can actually bring out either the boss monster with it, right here, or the other two Parshath cards as well. And that right there opens up a heck of a lot of problems, because since this card has a summoning effect attached into it, it's actually vulnerable to. It actually makes itself vulnerable to Silent Warning on top of the other counter traps that are available in this deck. Can tell you right now, I can understand trying to push the new Parshath stuff. I just don't understand why this trap card has so many costs when there are two other traps that can do it just as well. So, well, that's just for the hollows. Now, I did flash Minerva before. I'm going to talk a little bit quick about Minerva. Another level 4 light attribute fairy monster. Whenever a counter trap is activated, Minerva actually gets a power-up effect, boosts her attack by 500. And more importantly, if Sanctuary of the Sky is up on the field, you can actually grab a counter trap from your graveyard that's different from the one that has a different name from the one you just activated. So Minerva actually gives you attack boost, which a lot of counter fairies in the counter fairy deck seem to turn around and lack. So you can actually get her into beast mode pretty quickly. Recycling counter traps, also a very good thing. Okay, and I'm going to turn around and do these two cards. You have the two other Parshaths, Air Knight Parshath, and then you have the Neo Parshath, the Sky Paladin. These two were included in the previous fairy deck that was not released here in the TCG. To get Neo Parshath out, you have to tribute Air Knight Parshath. Basically, they both can do piercing damage, and whenever they do damage, they allow you to draw a card, so it's a little bit of a draw engine. The thing about Neo Parshath is that it also can gain attack as long as, the Sky Sanctuary is on the field, and your life points are higher than your opponent's. Alright. We got Matell, Sage of the Sky. I like Matell in counter fairies. Basically, whenever you activate a counter trap, you gain 1,000 life points. And then as long as the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, you can actually pop one of your opponent's cards. So this card can actually make things a little bit more difficult for your opponent, because you're constantly adding LP and taking things off their field. It adds another great layer of control element to this deck. Then you have Harvest Angel of Wisdom. Now the thing about it is that this card has to be destroyed by battle, but you can then recycle counter trap cards back into your deck. I can tell you right now, this card would be a little bit better if it's by card effect or battle, but it's just battle, so you have to crash something into it, and crash this thing into something to get the recycling effect. I mentioned this before about Artemis. Whenever a counter trap activates, you draw a card. Artemis for a long while was the draw power of this deck. It still is. I can't tell you how good this card is. Just play it in the counter fairy deck and you'll find out. Next counter fairy we have is Linear, the Liberator. Basically, whenever a counter fairy is counter trap is activated, you can turn around and add one. What is it? Oh, let's add 2 of your banished fairy type monsters to your hand. Not bad. I mean, it makes up for the summoning conditions of the new Parshath and even Ava's effect, but okay. Then you have Guiding Aerodine. Now, Guiding Aerodine is the only pendulum monster in this deck. I was kind of disappointed that Konami didn't give us the other half of the scale. I mean, I would have loved to have another level 4 light attribute fairy pendulum monster that can do something else. But Guiding Aerodine is actually very important because she sits in the scale in the back row. Her pendulum effect basically helps remove a lot of cost from counter traps, so you don't have to discard or pay life points to turn around and do it. The other thing that I actually do like about her is her monster effect. Now, her monster effect, whenever she's destroyed, you reveal 3 counter traps from your deck. Your opponent chooses one to add to your hand, the other two are basically recycled back to your deck. That effect, I can tell you right now, is going to be very key to counter fairy decks. Eventually, when I do, and I can tell you right now, I will be doing a counter fairy deck profile in the near future. I'm telling you this right now that Guiding Guarantee's monster effect is very key to the deck. It helps speed things up a lot. Alright. What else we got? More boss monsters. We have Archer Christina. Basically, you need 4 fairy type monsters with different names in your graveyard, and then you can special summon this card out. It blocks special summons. There's that. Splendid Venus. Splendid Venus basically weakens the attack power of anything that's not a fairy type on the field. I think it also prevents your spell or trap cards from being chained to them as well, so your opponent can't respond. You got Athena right here. Athena's pretty awesome. Basically inflicts burn damage whenever a fairy type monster is summoned. And it can even swap things off the field with things in the graveyard, so she's very useful. Okay, we have Tethys. Tethys is a very interesting deck. I used to run Tethys in an older version of my counter fairy deck. Basically, whenever you draw into a fairy type monster, you can reveal it to your opponent, and then you can keep and you can draw a card. If you reveal another fairy type, if you draw into another fairy type monster, you can reveal it, and you can just keep drawing and drawing and drawing and drawing. That's basically her effect. It was pretty good. While I had it, ultimately I went for something different. All right. Hecate Tres makes an appearance in this deck as well. Basically, discard a card from your hand, you search your deck for the continuous spell Valhalla. Valhalla allows you to special summon a fairy type monster as long as you don't control any other monsters on the field. Alright, we have Gellin Duel. Basically, this is a wall monster. Basically, as long as you don't take damage, as long as you can keep this card in defense mode. Basically, can't be destroyed by battle. The only time it's destroyed is when your opponent inflicts damage to your life, some sort of effect damage to your life points, and then it pops itself. It can count as 2 tributes for a light attribute monster, which is pretty cool. I like the fact. Now I used to, again, this is a defensive card I used to run in counter fairies as well. It's a great card. Not so much great with today's meta, considering that the trick stars are kind of a thing, and with the effect damage, you can't keep this card on the field that long. Alright. We have Nova Summoner. Basically, whenever this card is destroyed, sent to the graveyard, you search your deck for a light attribute monster. I think it has to be 1,500 cards, 1,500 attack points or less. Yep. In the sanctuary on the scar of this guy is in the field, you search for Anti-Parsheth instead. Which is interesting. And then we got the hand traps. We have Honest. A favorite light attribute battle hand trap. Discard it whenever your monster is attacking or being attacked by a different monster. It gains that monster's attack. And you can run things over. Alright, Heralds. We have one Herald of Orange Light, Herald of Green Light, Herald of Purple Light. These are your hand traps. I mean, Orange Light is actually a tuner, so you could potentially synchro someone with this deck. They don't give you any secret monsters, though. Herald blocks monster effects. Yeah, Herald of Orange blocks monster effects. Herald of Green blocks spells. Herald of Purple blocks traps. Basically, you have to discard this card plus another fairy in order to negate the activation of the cards you want to negate. Pretty cool we get all 3 of them in there. Guiding Light basically grabs you and special summons a level 1 or lower light attribute monster from your graveyard. Alright, we got DD Sprite, another fairy type that can bounce itself off the field and bring itself back. Repeated synchros since it's a level 1 tuner. Not bad. Here's another hand trap right here. I mentioned this before. Hanwata. Basically, discard this card from your hand, and you can actually stop yourself from receiving effect damage. Out of all these cards, to be a tech card for the side deck, I can actually see this card being pretty useful. inside decks against a Trickstar matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing this card pop up more. That Hanawata being used inside decks just to counter Trickstars a lot more. Alright, now we have the actual field spell, the Sanctuary in the Sky. Basically, anytime a fairy type monster you control battles, you're not taking any damage from the battle. So if you need to crash Ariadne into another monster, or even what was it, Herald, Agent of Wisdom, to get their effects, you won't take any battle damage, and you just reap the rewards then. Okay. Alright. Cards from the Sky is next. Banish a life fairy monster from the field, then you basically turn around and draw 2 cards. You can't special summon or conduct your battle phase to turn and use this card, so it's typical of the draw power that it was around the time it was released. Alright. Celestial Transformation. Special summon a fairy type monster from your hand. Its attack is halved and is destroyed during the end phase. Pretty decent with Ariadne. Can't use it with Herald, unfortunately. Harvest, excuse me. Harvest, Agent of Wisdom. Mentioned this before with Hecate Tres, Valhalla. Continuous spell. No monsters on the field. Special summon a fairy type monster from your hand. Of course, this deck actually runs very well with Ties of the Brethren. Since it's a lot of level 4 light attribute fairy type monsters, this card is perfect for the deck. You have to pay 2,000 life points, but you get to target one monster like that on one monster on the field, and then you special summon monsters with the same level type and attribute with different names to the field along with it. It's a great card to have in the counter fairy deck. I can tell you right now, with the search power the way it is, might not even get that many copies of it, but definitely is something that you want to try and include in your deck. You can't special summon the turn you use this card, but still, you get the monsters on the field. It's a great way to tutor out Honest from your deck, because you can special summon to the field and then use Honest's effect to basically bounce it. Honest's field effect to bounce it back to your hand, so at least you have that protection. Alright. Then you have Light of Judgement. Basically, as the Sanctuary Scar of the Skies on the field, you discard 1 Light Attribute monster, and then you can apply one of the effects. Basically, you can look at their hand and send it to the graveyard, or just pick 1 monster on the field and send it to the graveyard. It's not a counter trap, though. Over here, we have Miraculous Descent. And basically, this is Miraculous Descent is basically kind of like a Call of the Hunt type of card, except with banished fairy type monsters. It equips us up to the monster, special summons from the banish zone, and if the card is destroyed, this card is destroyed, or if this card is destroyed, the monster is destroyed as well. Alright. Synthetic Seraphim. Basically, this card is face up on the field. Whenever a counter trap is activated, you get special summon tokens. I can tell you right now, that can open up a whole lot of link plays. Or synchro, since we do have a couple of turners in this deck as well. So, all right, Divine Punishment. Now we get to the meat of the deck, counter traps. Divine Punishment. You need this field spell, Sanctuary of the Sky, to be on the field. Activate this, negate monster effect, spell, or trap activation. All right. Dark Bribe. Oh yeah, negate spells or traps. Your opponent draws a card then. Solemn Warning. Any summoning that starts a chain, it can negate. Paying 2,000 life points. Ultimate Providence. Awesome card. Was a secret rare in the Bringer of the Shadow set. Again, discard a card you're looking to negate. Want to negate a monster effect, discard an effect monster. Negate a spell, discard a spell, negate a trap, discard a trap. With Guiding Ariadne on the field, you don't discard anything, you just negate. I like this one right here. Drastic Drop Off. Basically, whenever your opponent adds cards to their hand, I think you can actually activate this card and force them to send one of those cards they added to their hand to the graveyard. Basically, if they activate Terraforming, after they add the card to their hand, you flip this card, they're forced to just get rid of that field spell. So, very handy. And then you have Recoil, which is basically whenever your opponent activates a monster effect, you just negate it. Your opponent also draws a card because of it, but that's alright, that's not bad. And they also included a Seraphim token card with the deck as well. I like the fact that a lot of these newer structure decks are actually including token cards now. Before that, it was kind of hard to get a hold of them, so it's good that we're seeing more of these tokens. Alright, now, overall, this deck as a whole, you can build a damn awesome counter fairy deck with this with 3 copies of this deck. My thing about it is I already said my piece about the new process continuous spell. I would sooner run the field spell over this because it's more searchable. One card that it didn't include in this structure deck was the effect monster Zeritis, that you could discard from your hand to actually search it out from your deck. I can tell you right now, yeah, having that card in this deck would have actually made a little difference. Yeah, it activates in your hand, but you know what? And it's a monster effect, so it is vulnerable to things like Recoil or even Solemn Strike, or the Ultimate Providence, or what was it, Divine Punishment. But still, it's a great alternative way of searching out a field spell without having to rely on terraforming. The thing about counter fairies is that you're typically running a lot of back row with this deck, so you're going to be needing to want to have those as much as possible of your back row open, so you can actually be able to respond to this deck. I do like the fact that this deck included the hand traps. I know some of those hand traps can actually be pretty hard to get at times. I know Herald wasn't exactly easy back in the day. But if you're interested in building counter fairies, 3 copies of this deck and you're pretty much set with being able to build. I mentioned this earlier in the video. I am going to be doing a counter fairy deck profile as soon as I get my extra copies of the cards I need for that deck in. I'm going to be building it up, retooling it, building it up, and I will have it up here on my channel soon. Alright. This deck is actually a welcome addition to the structure deck lineup, and it actually brings counter fairies back into the fold. If not, I don't think they'll be meta, but I do think they'll probably be a little bit more popular as a rogue deck now that they're a little bit more available. Alright, so until my next video, peace out.